Ever since the coronavirus pandemic began, your mind is probably worrying with only one question: when will this pandemic end? So on this video of The World in a Nutshell, when will this pandemic end? Oh, and don't forget to share this video to as many people as possible so we together can fight this virus. The first thing you need to know is that all pandemics end at one point or another. This coronavirus pandemic may be over in late 2021 or early 2022. It's just how this pandemic ends that really matters. There are three ways a pandemic can end. The first option is incredibly deadly but is very fast. The second option is highly effective but it's essentially impossible to coordinate. And the third option is probably the best option, but it's a little long. Let's start with option number 1. Option number 1 is relatively simple and easy to follow. You basically do absolutely nothing to stop the virus. You basically let the virus go on its one-man rampage. The virus would spread at lightning speed since there are no countermeasures to help stop the virus. This would mean that more people were going to get infected, and healthcare systems would be overburdened by the incredible amount of infected people. The entire theory behind this idea is that those who are vulnerable to the virus, like those who have pre-existing health conditions like diabetes, and those who are aged above 65 would get wiped out, and those who are still alive would become immune to the virus and create herd immunity, and thus the pandemic fizzles out. The only issue is that it sounds like something Thanos would do in these kinds of situations, so that leaves option number 2 and 3. Let's move on to option number 2. Option number 2 is the exact opposite of option number 1. It basically works by sending everyone into a quarantine frenzy, as in quarantines, social distancing, wearing gloves and masks in public. You get the idea. The only issue with this approach is that we humans were descended from monkeys, and we weren't exactly as coordinated as we thought we were. Thus, this approach is clearly out of the question. With option number 1 and 2 out of the picture, we're left with option number 3. Option number 3 works a little bit like option number 2, with a few small quirks. It basically works by placing countermeasures to try and slow down the virus until a vaccine can be made to stop the virus. After that, we vaccinate every person on the planet, and the pandemic fizzles out. So, do we have a vaccine for the coronavirus yet? Well, yes. Hooray, right? There's just one problem. Even if we do find a vaccine for the coronavirus, it likely won't be very effective for very long. And why is that? That's because the coronavirus mutates. No, not that kind of mutate. That kind of mutate. Now on the outside, this virus doesn't look very mutated, but on the inside, it's very much mutated. In order to understand what mutates mean, we'll have to go back to when the virus first infected the body. When the virus infects your body, it doesn't just go for your vital organs first, it attacks a certain cell. It then hijacks and reprograms the cell into creating more of the virus. But every now and then, the cell screws up and ends up creating a new strain of a virus. This new strain can be more contagious and more deadly, or less contagious and less deadly. Even though the pandemic itself may go away, the virus itself won't go away. This virus would likely become an endemic. An endemic is a virus or a disease that stays in humanity forever, similar to that of the flu or the measles, even though we have vaccines for both the diseases. But how this pandemic ends, or at least comes to a controllable rate, depends on how we react to this virus. If we follow the latest quarantine and social distancing measures, chances are the virus would decrease to a controllable rate, allowing doctors more time to create better and better antivirus vaccines. So right now, the best defense is in your hands. Literally.